Hello and welcome to another episode of the MiamiHal Real Estate Show. Every single week, I have a great guest sitting in the chair right next to me. This week, we're going to talk condos. And when we talk condos, we have the absolute expert, and that is Peter Zalewski. Peter, thank you so much for coming in.
Hal, it's my pleasure. Thanks for making time for me.
Yeah, no, you made time for us. And the last time you did this was March 10th of this year. And we turned it into an article. And the headline, if you can't see it on the screens right now, is Ugly Condo Cliff Likely Ahead for South Florida. Now, that was a couple months ago. So we're going to decide whether likely has turned into it's happening, right?
Well, what I can tell you is we made the call of a cliff. And what is a cliff? People stop paying their maintenance fees. They default. Either they do it intentionally or unintentionally. Yeah. Lo and behold, it becomes harder and harder in order to operate a condo association, which triggers ultimately a push down in price or a decrease in price. I will tell you, we called it in June of last year. Wall Street Journal did a story less than a month ago confirming basically our story. So we're taking a victory lap, but I'm here. I'm going to make another prediction as well, going forward for the next few months or maybe years.
Hold off on that because the audience needs to stay tuned to get their prediction. But one of the things that I found interesting in what you just said is you predicted this in June of last year. And what I really want to stress to people that are paying attention to real estate and are looking at national news outlets, even the Miami Herald or things that are here, when they say Miami, it really can't be quantified as Miami. We have so many micro neighborhoods and so many micro markets within the real estate market. Condos is one sliver of, what we really need to be talking about. And obviously we'll focus on that today. But single family homes are very different than condos and can have completely different buyers or sellers markets at the time that the condos are one way, single family can be the other. We have homes, single family homes that are in homeowners associations versus not, different markets. So there's so many ways to slice it. And thankfully, again, for the audience, we have an expert here, the expert, I would even hazard to say. Condo Vultures is one of your enterprises, and you also have a club. So let's take a few minutes and talk about the club, because I find this very interesting. You have enough people that take interest where they're paying members of your club. And you meet how often and what do you typically talk about?
So the objective of the club is to basically provide unfettered, unauthorized information. We pull data. The data I pull is the same data I share with Wall Street type of hedge funds or private equity groups, family offices, stuff like that. But I share it with club members. And the motivation is if you were a do-it-yourselfer, a lot of people think they can do it on their own, but inevitably what they find is they try on their own and they end up calling a realtor after the fact. So this is a way, if you want to do it on your own, we'll give you all the information that's necessary, but we're also providing the information to realtors. A lot of the realtors who are out there, they're trying to work the market. Yeah. They can't get a good sense of what's going on. So we're like the opposite side of all the news they're getting. And then it's up to them to determine, okay, how does that work into my marketplace, what I'm trying to do? And more importantly, should I actually take this listing? This listing is going to cost me $1,000 to $5,000 to take on. The responsibility, the time, is it actually worth it given the price that the seller wants? And we help them to kind of slice and dice and become much more efficient.
Got it. And the good news for those watching this particular episode is they're going to get some of that information for free that typically you're charging for, right?
Correct. And the club is mostly online. We publish 5 or 6 pieces a week. I do a monthly meeting where it's basically a recap of everything that's gone on. It's kind of like a Zoom call. And then once a month, we get together for what's called a meetup. It's a social opportunity. Come out there, talk shop, vent if you want, take a victory lap, all that type of stuff. People just get together. So a lot of people don't like condos because there's so many complications to them. And I'm trying to make it easy and understandable. So, we're north of 80 members and we've been up just over roughly about a year or so. In June, it'll be a year.
Got it. And for those, I don't want to forget this at the end of the show, so I'm going to give you an opportunity now. For those that like what they're going to hear today, how do they get in touch with you to become members of that club?
Yes, MiamiCondo.club. And what you'll find is you'll find the archives, you'll find the videos, you'll find, we take shots at stories that are realistic that a lot of people either A, they don't have the institutional knowledge to understand, or B, maybe they don't want it out there. I'll give you a perfect example. You didn't ask, but I will. There is a billionaire down here called Ken Griffin. He's supposedly $42 billion or so.
Know the name for sure.
Yeah, he's supposed to put up an office tower on Brickell Avenue right on the bay. He's supposed to break ground in the third quarter. So basically a month or two from now. And he came out on CNBC a few weeks ago saying that he's worried about stagflation, he's worried about tariffs, he's worried about costs. So he has to make the decision, should I actually go forward and try to build not knowing the future, or do I wait till the tariffs are played out, which effectively is Labor Day. So he came out saying, is he really going to break ground, or is he going to have to delay? That's a story you're not going to see anywhere else, but we know that because we're monitoring the market that closely. And what I will tell you, the reason I mentioned it has to do with condos, you have speculators who are buying condos in and around there to try to take advantage of everything Ken Griffin will ultimately, if he builds it, do. And that's how it ties into condos.
Got it. Well, we're going to talk about the everyday condos, not the billionaire condos.
100%.
and there's a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with, I own a condo and it's more than 40 years old. And I've been in the condo for 20 years and I'm seeing a troubling trend. The troubling trend is my maintenance fees have gone up, my insurance has gone up, and I'm worried about what to do. I don't want to move. What do people like that need to know from you to kind of read the tea leaves and make some decisions on what they might want to do with their future?
So generally speaking, in terms of the overall market, do you mind if I give some numbers?
Absolutely.
So we have some charts. If we could bring out the first active chart. If we bring up the first active chart, it's going to basically encapsulate what's going on in the marketplace, okay? So what it'll show you is a 10-year span, and this 10-year span will show you where we were in 2015 while we were still under construction and coming out of the Great Recession. Oh, I'll look over there. Sorry about that.
We've got a little technical issue, so I want to make sure Peter can see what he's talking about.
There we go. So what you're seeing in this chart is effectively April over April over April. And the reason April over April over April is critical because it's the end of the busy winter and it takes us into the slower summer. So I like to go at April. It shows you what's going into the summer buying season, which is May through October. And you'll see where we were in 15. This is when we were building after the Great Recession. People were having confidence. It went up, it was moderating around. It then started to fall. This is as the economy started to slow. The Federal Reserve started to raise interest rates. As they started to raise interest rates, we were looking into a close to recession. President Trump, 45, first administration, jawbones Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve Chairman, and interest rates are cut. And as a result, we get life support for what should have been a cleanup at the end of the last decade. Fast forward to where we are today. Yeah. We went through the pandemic. Everybody was queuing up to buy a unit. They were getting multiple offers. Hal, I'm sure you would get a listing.
Was busy.
Yeah, you were extremely busy.
Yeah.
So you saw where we kind of went down, and now we're Ving back. And the reason we're Ving back is that people either can't afford nor do they want to afford to live in one of these condos. And people are basically dumping it on the market. Roughly 29,000, 30,000 condos on the market. South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. Miami-Dade will represent about 40%, 45%. What you're going to find is 20,000 of the 30,000 are what we call vintage, 30 years or older. These are the ones that have real troubling future ahead. So if you're in one of these vintage condos, you basically have two ways to approach it. One, you cross your fingers, maybe you pray to whoever you pray to, and you hope that you get through to the other side. Or two, you look at selling. Unfortunately, you're probably too late to sell unless you take a drastic action and cut prices significantly to basically be able to eliminate some of the competition out there. So what I'm saying is it's a conundrum. Option three, and I'm not a financier, is to put a lot of debt on it. And if you put so much debt on it, the bank's not going to want it back. And you can basically ride it out until we get through the other side, which is probably about 2030.
But that's risky.
But that's a risky play. That's more of a, do not try this at home type of thing.
Yeah. You want to have some external advisors, not just listen to you or me.
Oh,
you want to make sure
100%
that you got a financial advisor that really knows what they're doing before you pull the trigger on something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Now, here's what people need to realize about a condo. A single family house is a work of art. Every single one's unique. It's special. It's different. The lot, this. A condo, it's a commodity. It's a salty snack. It's coffee, it's gasoline, it's anything like that. So if you think that your building is special because you over-improved your countertops and you have a star architect or whatever the case may be, when the market goes sideways, the only thing you're going to get special because of your special amenities or your star architect or whatever is you will trade first. You're not going to trade at a premium. You're going to trade at the same price, but you will be out the door first.
And by trade, you mean sell.
I mean, sell. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, industry terms versus what we do here on the show and out in the street. And that is very important for my audience to hear. When you have a single family home, you really do have a unique piece. You could think of it as a piece of art. And, when you make your changes, you are unlike anything else because even the walls are not the same as your neighbor. The roof isn't the same. But inside a condo, like it or not, it is a commodity. You are literally a square box where amongst millions of other square boxes, and certainly a couple hundred probably in the building that you're in. And no matter how much you over improve, as you point out, the only thing that you can do with over improvements is enjoy them while you live there, because you're not going to get that money out.
Yeah, over improving is like posterity, buying something for posterity. You love it, you want it, you want to put it on your mantle.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to resell it for what you paid for. Think about when you go on vacation. You buy this little knickknack and you love it and you overpay for it and but you try to resell it, you're getting 10 cents on a dollar if you can even give it away.
True. So for those that have a vintage unit, you went over the things that they should hear. What about somebody that just during the pandemic, they decided, I want to be in South Florida. They buy a condo. They paid a significant premium at that point, and now they're not so in love with their living conditions. They may still love South Florida, but they don't want to hold on to their condo. Do they try to sell now or do they sell later?
It's kind of being half pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. And basically, they missed the boat. They've missed the boat and they have to decide how am I going to get forward? I mean, it's almost like a hurricane is coming. So are you going to, you're going to put the hurricane shutters on and you're going to lock down, or you're going to get in a car and drive to Orlando or wherever you're going to drive. And that's basically what we have coming. So I would tell anybody who's sort of concerned about what's happening, you need to be prepared. If you've gotten hit with a special assessment, understand that is the first special assessment. There's going to be additional ones. Why? My experience is everything in real estate takes 3 times as long and costs twice as much. Once these contractors start to go in and do the work that's required, they're going to find other stuff. We just had a situation in Clearwater. There was a building that had one of its major studies approved.
Right.
It was approved. It was funded. The work began. While they were doing the work, they realized one of the main support pillars splintered at the bottom. They called 911. Minutes later, police were there, fire was there, a special response team with steel poles to sort of shore up the structure. So just because you got that dollar figure, you cannot count on it. It's a best guesstimate as to what can happen. So what I'm telling you is just be prepared to spend money. If you love the building, understand there's a cost associated with it. And what you used to pay, you need to throw that out, just like you throw out the idea of what eggs used to be.
And special assessments, I want to go over this a little bit with more detail, because it used to be in a commercial building, after the first 40 years, it needed a full assessment, needed to come up with fire and life safety things to current code, and to make sure everybody inside was safe. And of course, there was a general look at systems, plumbing and structural. But now, after Surfside, there is a significant change in attitude about how you approach that. And there's also engineering studies and several other things that condo owners or condo buyers really need to be aware of. So if you could briefly go over what has changed in the last year and a half or so and why that's so important.
Okay. Generally speaking, the Florida condo law was created in the 60s. I think it was 1963, in and around the Kennedy assassination time, somewhere in and around there. So fast forward to where we are today. Condos were pretty much going at it alone. They were doing what they were doing. Everybody loved it. You would spend some money. It didn't cost much. It's winter down here, hence snowbird. It just went on and on and on. Hurricane Andrew hits in 1992. South Florida changes. As a result of South Florida changing because of the hit insurance companies took, as well as individuals, they made some adjustments. And the adjustments basically said, if you're in a condo in and around the 40-year mark, you need to do a certain study to make sure the building is safe. It resulted because of insurance pressure. So Broward and Dade, Miami-Dade County, for the most part, were the only counties in the 67 counties of Florida that did it. Other counties have subsequently added it. But basically, you had 40 years. The 40-year mark, you do a checkup. Up till then, you do something called a structural integrity reserve study. Every 10 years, you did the structural integrity reserve study, but you didn't necessarily.
Even back then, every 10 years?
Yeah. You had to do the structural integrity reserve study. But the difference was you didn't have to fund it. So a structural integrity reserve study, make it real simple. Structural integrity is, let's take a look at it. Is it safe? Reserve is, what's it going to cost? You put it together, and that's how you come up with. So the experts, engineers, architects would go in. They tell you what's wrong with it. They tell you what's coming. They tell you what the lifespan is. How long is the roof going to last? This is how much it's going to cost. Now, before, you could basically defer the cost because you knew better as an association member, even though you didn't know anything, you simply deferred because you want to run up your maintenance. As a result of Surfside and the legislation, it's now being required. Although that could change in terms of when you have to start to collect the reserves because of new legislation that's been passed, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, we're waiting to see if he signs it.
Yeah.
But effectively reserves. You got to put money aside. The money that has to be put aside, that's the reason everybody's costs have gone up. Because before, they would simply defer. Now they're actually being forced to put the money in reserves, and that's leading to all of the maintenance fee increases, as well as special assessments.
Got it. So wanted to kind of shift gears now. We've been talking about people that own condos and whether or not they should do something. We've got some bright news too, do we not?
We have some excellent news if you were on the buy side of the transaction. There's two sides. There's the buy side, which is the buyer, and there's the sell side, which is the listing agent and or the seller. The buy side has plenty of opportunities coming up, and they're probably going to be tremendous opportunities if they know what they're doing. The seller is probably going to be, it's basically a yang to the yin that occurred during the pandemic when anybody who was putting their place on the market, they were able to, buyers had to compete to sort of get that unit. It's going the other way now where sellers are going to have to compete to actually get that buyer is sort of what I anticipate. So I think affordability is good and it's coming. I think if you're a seller, you need to understand affordability is coming like a tsunami, and you need to approach it in such a way for the next few years. And
we'll spend the next couple of minutes trying to figure out what the such a way should be from both the seller and the buyer side. Because as you predicted last June, we're starting to see everything come to fruition now. And you've got some specific percentage number we're going to get to in just a second. And if prices are going to come down, there's a reason for that, right? And it's not just in the wind because we have high insurance rates, because we have the risk of those special assessments. So when you're buying a condo, even though it's good news, you're going to pay a significant amount less, you also take on the future risk of additional insurance premiums and special assessments. Am I reading that right?
Yep, 100%. You're nailing it correctly. I mean, basically when you take on a condo, even if you get it cheap, there's probably going to be a significant carrying cost associated with it. I've seen studies done. One was done back in August by a company called First Service, Solar Property Management Company. They were ballparking maintenance fees in Miami-Dade County, just to give you context, north of $1.05 a square foot. So that means if you have 1,000 square foot place, you're dropping $1,000 a month just on the maintenance, which is not tax deductible. Of that maintenance, about 22% is going to be insurance. So when your maintenance goes up, you need to factor in or consider the fact that a lot of it's going towards insurance. Almost, 1 out of, or 25%, 25%.
I'm trying to remember, it's probably 10 to 12 years ago when I was out touring somebody in a brand new condo building, the cost per square foot for maintenance was about 25 cents.
Yeah, well, so typically what it used to be is if you did not have a swimming pool and you didn't have an elevator, it'd be about 25 cents. So you think 3-4 story building, something you would find in like a suburban. Now, when you got into the high rises, let's say downtown Miami,
50 cents for the door. And
exactly.
The key is when you have staff that's sitting at the front, right?
Yep.
Because the most expensive thing is paying a salary, right? Or multiple salaries. So
yeah, so
25 cents without a pool, without a doorman, 50 cents but that's not what it is today.
No, now most maintenance fees, and we're seeing new construction that's far north of $2 a foot, some pushing $3 a foot. But generally speaking, you're probably looking north of $1 a square foot. Again, you don't get that money back. Now, why is that important? Because if you were coming in to buy and you say, this is my forever condo, I'm never going to get rid of it, I'm going to retire here, blah, 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 which is a bad decision, first of all, from my perspective.
Okay. But
what you need to factor in is if something changes for whatever reason, I need to rent this place out. So I need to rent this place out. You need to always be in and around where your rent is going to cover your carry. And there's an easy way to do it. It's called the 1% rule. I can't recommend it enough. A lot of people say no.
Pay attention, folks. The 1% rule is important. Peter, please divulge.
It's the back of a napkin approach.
Yeah.
You're having lunch. Somebody says something. You pull out a napkin. You pull out a pen, and you start jotting it down. Basically, your rent needs to represent 1% of the value. And what do I mean by that? So if your place is worth $100,000, you need $1,000 a month in rent. So when your friend tells you they can get $1 million for their condo, you need to ask them, what is the rent? And unless they say $10,000 or more, the place is not worth $1 million. If they tell you they're getting $2,500, the place is worth $250,000. Real simple rule. It's not 100% perfect.
Right.
It'll help you, though, to eliminate. And the key is eliminating all the noise and find the opportunities and the value that ultimately is comfortable for you.
You brought some great charts. Which one should we go to next?
Why don't we go to the active chart number 2? What it's going to show you is the breakdown of pricing. It'll show you like where the price points are. Now, there's been a lot said about how, South Florida is overvalued, which it is, but all the condos are so extreme and they're ultra luxury, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. So we took a look at the April active listings, again, year over year, but this is for April of 2025. What you're going to find is 22% of the condos on the market in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, they're under $200,000.
That's surprising today.
You're going to find another 35% are under $400,000 or between $200,000 and $400,000. So at the end of the day, 57% of the condos on the market in South Florida, they're priced under $400,000. Now, why is that? A lot of it has to do with vintage. These older buildings that are 30 years or more, and people are simply unloading. This is contributing to what we're seeing in the big run up in active listings. In fact, last time we had this many active listings on the market going into May, the summer buying season. Last time we had it was 2016. And at that time, we were building from the Great Recession. So completely different type of situation. A lot of people like to talk about ultra luxury. You will see on the over $20 million, there's about 50 units or so that are available, and their average price is about ballpark $4,500 a square foot. Although I got a call yesterday from somebody doing a story for the New York Times. They're pushing $12,000 a square foot. So I want you to think about
what?
$12,000 a square foot is supposedly what a condo is under contract, and you're not going to know for years until the building's built and it's completed. $12,000 a square foot.
Name the building. Do you remember?
I don't remember. I of course push back, but I want your audience to think about this. Go stand in your bathroom, look around, and depending on the size of your foot, guesstimate how many feet are in your bathroom. And then I want you to apply $12,000 for every step you take. This is what they're trying to achieve. And
why specifically the bathroom?
Well, because the bathroom is nice confined space, and you're going to get a real good sense. Because if you do it in your living room, it's going to be a little bit too broad, and then there's a couch or there's a TV. But if you go in the bathroom, there's only so much place you can move. But that's the point. $12,000 a foot. That's what they're trying to achieve. What's the real price? I don't know. $2,000 to me is insanity. $1,000 a square foot is probably reality. Developers will tell me I'm crazy. There's all these costs. Well, I'll push back and I'll say, well, Mr. or Mrs. Developer, you're making 33% profit margin. Plus you got all your other junk fees along the way. You got a developer fee and this fee. Everybody's trying to get rich, but like they say, a hog gets slaughtered and a pig gets fat. So pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and that's basically what we've had going on. But the good news is a lot of people will be going on the Ozempic, and they're going to be getting a lot thinner in the days ahead.
Okay, love that analogy. We have a lot of cranes up in the air.
Yes.
Should we have that many cranes up in the air?
Well, that's all a result of. Think about how a condo is built or a rental tower is built. You're looking at a 5 to 7 year period. First, you buy the dirt. You go deal with the city officials. What can I do? What can I not do? You get it approved. You talk to the community. Lo and behold, you get it approved. Now you can go out and hire a bunch of pretty people, buy some great booze, get some food, have people in, try to convince them on the lifestyle. And then ultimately, once they get enough, then they go forward and they break ground. They start to construct. Some of the ballpark, the first 10 stories is like 18. What is it? It's basically it's 3 years for construction or so is what it's going to take depending on the height of the building. So it's a 5 to 7 year commitment. So the cranes that are in the air today, they got funded back in a different era when interest rates were much lower, when there was no talk about 10% across the board in tariffs, where the stock market was much more predictable, when we didn't have talk about Moody's downgrading United States credit worthiness. AAA. Yeah. So we have a lot of factors, a lot of things have changed. And as a result of that, just like I mentioned, Ken Griffin, the billionaire, you have to consider, can I go forward with the information I know today versus what I knew back then when those buildings were originally financed?
And so Not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was touring somebody around that wanted to buy a brand new high-end condo, and the developers and the sales team really were in control. And they were spouting numbers that, just like you were saying, were ridiculous per square foot, and they were getting people to buy them. Those cranes are in the air, so we're probably talking another 2 years on average before they can really sell the unit. They obviously are going to pre-sell, but before somebody could move in. Is that the conditions? Can somebody that wants to buy a brand new condo in Miami, do they have power now where they didn't have power 2 years ago?
In theory, today's pre-construction buyer does have power. But what I will tell you though, if you're going in alone or if you're working with a real estate professional, is pay attention to the commissions. Typically, the way it used to work is the buyer would get 3% on a resale, and pre-construction they would get 5%. The way it's been since the Great Recession is there's a 50% deposit you put down, and the developer uses that money in order to build. So let's fast forward to where we are today. One of my colleagues has been shopping all these pre-construction. And what I can tell you is back in the day, it was a 50% deposit in order to buy. Today, 30%. So that means they're getting a little bit looser, the developers. What was the commission back in the day? It was 5%. What is the commission today? It's starting at 7%. What we saw right after the Great Recession is we were seeing pre-construction pricing as much as 10%. So you can see we're heading in the wrong direction if you are a seller. We're heading in the right direction if you're a buyer. So yes, I think buyers have the opportunity. The developer will tell you they can't. That's the real simple response to them. What you say is, don't price out my unit in this tranche, this group of units. Price me out in the next tranche. So what they do is they're not going to sell 300 units outright. Definitely. They'll break it down into groups. Yeah, and then they'll sell one group, and then based on the one group, they'll sell the next group. So if you can't get in the original group, see if you can get into the next one. It's almost like an offering that they do with any kind of equity raise.
And as those tranches were sold, obviously first tranche, the best units or best views would go. Mm-hmm. But what was interesting back then is the second tranche, they'd be like, well, we were able to command $1,000 a square foot. Now we're going to command $1,400 a square foot because now there's less inventory. It's not as good a product, but it's scarce, more scarce. So is that still going to happen? Because I see that reversing as well.
Yeah, the developers are in a very difficult position. One thing I would say is, listen, if you're out there shopping for pre-construction, what you need to know is you need to see if the developer has a track record. And what do I mean by that? If this is the developer's first project, what I can tell you is they will over-improve the project and they will be late. They will not understand how to get it done, how to get it over the finish line. Now, if they've done it before and they have battle scars, they're probably going to be able to do everything that they say. The first project out of the chute in South Florida, it doesn't typically end well for a developer, but if they can live the fight another day and put up a second project, then they're going to be okay. So if you're out there shopping, check out the pricing, check out the deposit. Should be 50%. If it's down to 30%, it shows you some weakness. But ultimately, does the project have bank financing or lender financing? Why do you want lender to know if it has lender financing? Because somebody, third party, has come in, they've looked at the books, and they know what's really going on, not what your beautiful real estate person is telling you in the sales office.
Right. Very brief aside, for those of you that heard the commission rates at 7 or even up to 10%, it's very interesting as to why that is. And for a real estate agent like myself, it's because the sale is done over the course of probably a year to maybe even out to 3 years. And we need to get paid something for our efforts up front and as it goes along. And what I will tell the audience is if you work with me, there's always a developer fee. And that developer fee is not insignificant when you're talking about $1 million plus purchase. What I try to work out with my buyer is I will take the commission and I will basically give it back to my buyer to help them alleviate that fee altogether. So those of you that have stuck around so far, we're going to the percentages, right?
Now we're going to hit the percentages.
Yeah, we've got a special graphic and you've got a lot of good things to tell us. Tell us about what percent?
So my prediction is, and I called this in January, and I'm doubling down on it. We're going to see a 40% price reduction.
Did you say 40%?
Yeah, 40.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 40% price reduction is what I'm calling for. And before you say I'm crazy, you can say I'm crazy anyways. But
you're crazy.
Yeah. But before you say I'm crazy, take a look at this chart. This chart will show you, okay, in the winter buying season, which is going to go from November of 2024 to April of 2025, we had 11,700 units trade, 592 a unit, 592,000 a unit.
On average, okay.
On average. Go back to the pandemic year. Before the pandemic, 2018, 2019, you'll see 322, 238, right at the bottom chart. All right, so that's where we were in the last regular winter. So if you appreciate, I don't know, 6%, 5% annually, which is a good pace, you would end up at a certain number. So the 322 is before the pandemic and the boom and everybody coming down here. And the 592 is where we stand today. If you exercise or see a 40% price reduction, look to the right and the column that's yellow.
Yep.
You're going to see what a 40% price reduction takes you to. That takes you to $355,000 a unit or a door. $355 in 2025. Compare that to 2018, 2019, the bottom line. You'll see that that's much more reasonable versus where we are today. And just for what it's worth, the column that says year over year change, that's the percentage increase in pricing that went up. So we had that bump in 21, 22, in 2021. You see how dramatic it was. And unless you think that this is sustainable and you can pay $13 for eggs and all this type of stuff, it's got to pull back. So I'm calling this to be transitory, and this will probably be something that has dramatic effects on the condo market going forward. So 40% across the board price decrease, and people are going to say I'm crazy, but I will stand by it, and I'm fairly confident it will play out that way.
Wow. Okay.
Now, if I could just add one other thing.
Absolutely.
Now, why am I confident about it? Remember I mentioned 1% rule. 1% rule is rent is 1% of what the value is. Okay. $592,000. That means everybody in South Florida has got to be pulling $6,000 a month rent. If you take my 40% reduction, now we're somewhere in the ballpark of $3,500.
What it should be and what it's likely to go to.
So ultimately, fundamentals, it always reverts back to what it should be. It'll be fundamentals, and that's my call. But there's going to be a lot of pain along the way.
What's interesting is you on that last chart, you had somewhere around 6 to 8% growth this year, right?
Correct.
Or this past year.
In terms of pricing.
And what we're now hearing in the press, remember, this is not about the condo market, it's about the overall market, and it's at a too macro level for it to really pay attention. But Florida is actually seeing reductions of 2 to 3% on sales these days now.
Yep, 100%. So typically what I've seen, I've been here since 93. I've been through the Resolution Trust Corporation cleanup and the great, the boom, the Great Recession, all that type of. Typically what happens, the last thing to give is pricing. And the reason pricing goes bad, or actually you start to see a decrease, is that initially, as it's unwinding, you're going to have value shoppers, wealthy individuals who are getting a discount on good quality stuff. So the price that's being recorded is high, but it's not even close to what was originally being asked. And then at some point that falls through and the bottom falls out, and then we get into the doom loop scenario where the plane pilot is trying to pull it out of the loop before it crashes.
Peter, always eye-opening. You actually gave us a couple of extra minutes of free time. If you want to hear more from Peter, unfortunately, you're going to have to figure out a way to go to his club meetings and things like that. Again, one quick way. How do they get in touch with you just to take it to the next level?
Real simple. MiamiCondo.club. If you go there, you'll see plenty of information. You can see information about joining the club, and feel free to reach out.
Peter, we're going to have you back again because we got to make sure and keep you honest with your predictions.
Yep. I'm standing by them.
Very good. Until next week, have a great week in real estate. Thanks.
Bye.